Hey guys, VaulSC here. Hope that you're having a good week. So today I'm going to be talking about the new errata FAQ for infiNity the game N4 4th edition. It is number 1.3 that we're up to, and it just came out yesterday, and in this video I'm going to be going over some of the details, but giving you more of the community commentary about what this actually means for your infiNity the game play experience. Now, let me just cut straight to the chase and give you the TLDR. I actually approve of this update. I give it a thumbs up. It is mostly positive changes, not everything, and like all of these reviews that I do, I urge you guys to not sort of treat it like the categorical, VaulSC likes it or VaulSC doesn't like it. Just go into the specifics, allow, a mixed review that actually objectively comments on things that are good and things that are not good, and try and take away, all of the details as much as you can, right? But overall, I give it a thumbs up. I think it's actually a good change, and I'm looking forward to seeing, fewer issues in the game as a result of what this has brought on. I really mean that. And maybe that'll take a few people by surprise, because I criticize Corvus Belli very often. I'm often very hard on them. And it's not because I'm a hater, and it's not because I'm out to get them. The reason why I criticize Corvus Belli so much is that when you're a consumer and you're not treated fairly by, whoever you're paying the money to, you need to stand up for yourself. You need to stick up for yourself and say something about it. And that's really all it is. Like, if you spent $1,000 buying some tabletop wargaming miniatures from me with the underlying assumption that they are going to be used for a game, and then I go ahead and change the rules of the game because I have the power to do that, and it turns your experience of playing that game into a miserable one because the game is much worse. That's on me. Like, you have not been treated fairly in that sort of situation. So that's how I encourage people to think of it. Like, if Corvus Belli mess up with their rules, they should be accountable to us for that. But also, having said that, like, I am not the kind of YouTube channel where it's like a political or religious thing where I'm always attacking the other side. You've got to call it as you see it. My reviews wouldn't be worth listening to if I only did good ones or only did bad ones, right? So you've got to balance it out, guys. You have to be objective, and when they do a good job, you say so, and when they don't, you say so as well. Don't be too one-sided about it, right? But look, I can understand that there are a few people who actually don't like this FAQ. There are some things in here which are a bit controversial, and I want to spend the most amount of time on those things. Look, we will go through the FAQ and just point some things out. But look, it's available on Corvus Belli's website. You know where to find it. You can go through it line by line if you're interested in the details. But that's not why we're here in this video. This is more about the community commentary on all of this stuff. So why don't I just start heading into it, and we'll break it down a little bit. So here it is. The red text is the new stuff. The black text just tells you what was previously in the previous version before 1.3 came out, okay? So right off the bat, I just want to say that there are a few common sense things in here that aren't really being talked about on social media. So, for example, there's a thing here which says, where was I going to find it? I remember seeing something about how unconscious and disabled models, or whatever it was, or null state models, don't stop you from using cautious move and stuff like that. I think this is probably like a better example here. When do unconscious, dead, or separatized troopers leave a combat group? Unconscious troopers are still part of the combat group. Dead or separated troopers aren't part of any combat group. Just little things like that are just kind of helpful clarifications, and you don't really hear people talking about it just because, it seems like a sensible change. It doesn't really break the game. And then moving on, there's some stuff like this, where it's like, okay, they are fixing this issue that we complained about, and we sort of asked them to fix, where their previous FAQ implied that you have to physically say, okay, here's model number 1, and I'm going to measure the distance from model number 1 to this other model, telling you that it's a mine. So even if your model's in hidden deployment, you have to point to the table and say that camera marker there is a mine. What they're now saying is that you do have to measure it and check, but your opponent's not witnessing that. So it is a bit weird, because it begs the question of, how will that be verified if your opponent can't witness you? But this is a better version. Even though it has its own problems, it's much better than, a strictly rules as written thing where you basically disclose all of your hidden information just like that, which we all agreed was silly. And look, we asked them to fix that, and they have fixed it. So you can't criticize them for doing what you want, right? Let's come down here. During your main part of the deployment phase, can you reposition troopers' deployables? I think this is just a clarification, just fixing some bad wording from the past. The idea here is that if you roll for the booty or metachemistry or something like that, you can't then move your troopers somewhere else, and it just wasn't 100% clear before, so I assume that's why they're putting that wording in there. This other one also came up in the forums and in Discord here. So let's say if I have an engineer and I'm trying to cancel a negative state from my friend, but I'm activating in line of sight of an enemy riot stopper or something, and they hit both my engineer and the model that I'm trying to repair. And the model that I was trying to repair, I'm removing one state, and then I get another state inflicted to it. Well, they've explained how that works. So what could happen here is the engineer does actually take away the negative state, and then the riot stopper affects it again. So I like it how they've clarified the sequencing there, the order, and I think a lot of other people will as well. That is just a problem that's solved. This is not something which changes game balance or anything, or makes the game weird or hard to understand. The engineer fixes the existing problem, and if there's a new problem applied, it does that after the engineer has solved the first one, which is intuitive to me. That's sort of what you would want, right? So let's come down and let's just come down and talk about the main one here, because this is the one that sort of that's attracted most of the discussion and the intention, and that's the way that going up and down the side of a wall has changed. So the big deal now is that when you climb up the side of a building or use super jump, so climbing and jumping, instead of measuring from the bottom of the silhouette to the bottom of the silhouette again when it is up there, which is actually quite a long way, you can measure from the top of the silhouette to the bottom of the new location. And the crucial thing about that is that it means that if your silhouette is larger, you actually move further, because you're effectively gaining the height of your silhouette as part of your reach, your journey, right? So that works for climbing and jumping, and the additional point there is you can actually vault your way through that little parapet sidewall, okay? So for people who aren't really too familiar, let's just jump into TTS, and I'll just give you guys a quick demonstration example type thing. So this is, a tournament map from another competition. I didn't make this, but here we have some infiNity miniatures looking really cool, and here we have, this wasn't actually on the map that I'm on right now. I just deleted some buildings and added this, but this is our old classic, style building that Corvus Belli created many, many years ago intentionally to use for the game. So it's an official kind of terrain piece is what I'm getting at. And notice how all of the walls have this little parapet thing, so that when you're up there, like with this guy here, he's obviously got a little bit of cover. Obviously, this was made in N3/N2 when you needed the thing there for cover. Nowadays, you don't necessarily need it against ground level, but we can all agree that this is what it's there for. But the confusing thing in the past was that with climbing, you needed to sort of be standing next to the wall, become a silhouette, and what happens is that you go up the wall and you're trying to get to this location here, right? So the way that would work is that you sort of put the model on its side, and it gets a bit weird. It's like this, and then it's, you rotate it around like that, and it's basically sitting on the side of the wall. It's just going up and down the wall like that. And the point is that it's supposed to be traversing this little lip, this little parapet, right? So if we look down like this, part of your movement is meant to be going up and over this thing. So you're having to go up, and then you go horizontally over it, and you finally come down. And you can't actually start using normal short skills to move and shoot again until you've fully stopped climbing. So the problem is that the height of this wall is probably just over 4 inches as it is. In fact, I should be able to measure it 3D, shouldn't I? Something like that, 2.8. So you should really be able to climb from the bottom up to the top, and I think they're designed to be able to do that. But with some of the bigger buildings out there, that may not work so well. But the idea is that if you're having to count the movement across the parapet as well, you're going much more slowly. And it's even worse for super jump, because with super jump you would normally be wanting to stand like around here and then just swiftly jump up into the building. But because you had to fully clear this parapet and actually use your movement to just get fully up and over it, a lot of the time you just couldn't. So you're using your super jump just to come over here and you're wasting an order, and then you're jumping and you're only just barely getting here. So what they're saying now is that if I copy this guy here, let's make him a different color. So color tint and purple. Alright, so there you go. So the green guy is the start location, and the purple one is the end location. What we're saying is that we're going to measure from the top of a silhouette. Like if I just highlight this little bit here, we're only having to measure from that to the bottom of this silhouette here, rather than the top of this to the top up here, or the bottom of it to the bottom. And as you can see, that's a much shorter distance, which means you can get away with like coming all the way over here. So the thing about that is that super jump, depending on what your super jump speed is, you know, you can actually get up and onto the building really quite quickly. Now, the thing that's got us all quite interested is not so much what happens with the S2s, but the larger guys. So if you look at his silhouette, where is it like that? As you can see, the distance between the top of a silhouette here and the bottom of a silhouette over here is a much shorter distance than those S2s. Previously, it still would have been a long way, like the bottom of this here up to the top bottom of this here. That's still quite a long way. And if you're using super jump, you're going right up into the air like that, and then you're having to go all the way across like that, and you have to clear the parapet and your base there, and you have to go higher than the parapet. You have to go all the way over, which is just an insanely long way. So in a lot of situations, you can't even use super jump. Like you'd have to be like very close to the wall, and even then the building has to be low enough to be able to manage it. But now it's laughably easy. Like you're even getting a lot further than before, where you'd sort of, you know, come all the way just across here, no trouble at all. And the bigger you are, the better you are at doing it. The taller you are, you know, the more effective it is. And with ignoring that parapet as well, you know, tags just became a lot more mobile in terms of verticality. All right, so why are people complaining about that? Because there are people who aren't happy about it. And the complaint really stems from the implications that it has for game balance. So although it just makes S2s a bit easier for getting up and down, if you talk about a unit like the Bearpode, he really gets the advantage here of having, you know, an ability. He's got, what is it, Climbing Plus? So he's pretty good at that. And Climbing Plus means that you can actually do this in a short skill, so you can move up there and shoot or make a close combat attack, whereas the S2 unit, wherever he is, he can't do that because he has to actually climb up there, which takes a long skill, not a short skill. So the Bearpode is actually more dangerous than it was, because it can actually get from ground level to a top level and make an attack in close combat, or with a chain rifle, you know, shotgun, I should say. And people don't really like the fact that it has buffed tags, which are already very powerful in the meta, and units like the Bearpode, which are just oppressively, you know, powerful. They are undercosted. Their abilities are too good for what you pay. They're in a faction that has a lot of other good stuff as well. And the FAQ seems to have been a bit tone deaf to that. It's actually kind of made this a little bit less bearable, pun intended. Lol. But as I said at the start of this video, I'm actually feeling reasonably positive about the changes, and I want to speak to why that is. And look, I don't want to disagree with the people who are against this this new sort of, you know, parkour Bearpodes and tags, because so I agree that, you know, we shouldn't be making those tags and the Bearpodes better. But overall, I find it's okay, because with infiNity, most games happen on ground level. Like, most of what you're doing is just on the ground level behind these crates, and going up and down buildings like this is a very small portion of most competitive games. That's just what it's like. The other thing about this is that it just generally makes it easier to go up and down buildings, which is usually a good thing, because with infiNity using so much beautiful 3D tactile terrain, you know, very good players and very experienced players know that if they waste any of their active turn resources whatsoever going up and down things and not doing damage to their enemy, that's really bad, because then it turns over to your opponent's turn and they are crushing you instead. So it means that we're probably going to see a little bit more usage of terrain. We're actually going to be interacting and changing levels with our troopers a bit more. And I generally find that a good thing. I mean, I really cringe when I see a player, moving their whole link team to the edge of the wall and setting up the jump or the climb, then moving them all down, then moving them all across, and then they run out of orders, and then I just beat them. That's just really sad to see. With a setup like this, though, you can actually quite easily jump everybody off the building and then start walking with them normally. And, you can see buildings being interacted with a bit more, and maps actually being able to feature a lot more verticality, stuff like that. Probably you should have used this building as an example, though, because you can see the ledge a bit better. But anyway, I just seriously feel like it's not going to break the game any more than it currently is. I mean, infiNity is a game that has problems. I could make a lot of other videos about all of the little things that are wrong with infiNity and need to be fixed. But I don't feel like this problem features very high up in the rankings of what's just busted about this game. Really, you need to be addressing unit points, costs. You need to be addressing skills that see no use, or other skills that are unintentionally, much more powerful than they are. Some weapons, like shotguns, for example. I was actually planning on doing a whole other video where I just go through a list of like the top 10, rules in the game that just don't work, the way that they're supposed to. But yeah, just coming back to this, I'm happy about it. I mean, it's not going to suddenly make units like Rodox, who have super jump, into a super unit. That's still going to be terrible. It does make Bedpodes a little bit better, which is a pain. But yeah, there are going to be a very small number of situations where this makes the difference between winning and losing, in my mind. Okay. So perhaps let's just move off that topic for a bit. Coming back to this, we'll come down a little bit further. What else have we got? So, inspiring leadership only works if the troop is current lieutenant on the table. Just fixing a lot of common sense stuff where there might have been room in the wording previously for people to question that. But, they're just making sure it's black and white, which is good. Troopers exploding and dying but not damaging anybody else. That makes sense. Now, I was talking to Headchime, who gave me a little cheat sheet, so maybe I'm just going to refer to this for a bit. Okay, mine layers have to measure. That makes sense. And coherency for decoys, hollow echoes. Your opponent has to look away. Yep, we covered that. Hollow echo and HD write down locations, then check coherency on revealing. So that comes from this little thing about hidden deployment and hollow states interacting. One thing we didn't really like before was the coherency sort of giving away the presence of things, and I assume that's what this was about. Although I might be wrong. I mean, this particular rules change here is not one I've seen a lot of people, up in arms about, who are, worried about any massive earthquake or tectonic shift in the way that we play the game. Here's a more interesting one. So, peripherals or their controller that enter the isolated state. So that disconnects the peripheral, which is one that just makes sense to me. This is something I thought should have been changed for a while. Previously, it was the case that if you have a peripheral unit running around with the main controller and you manage to pull off an isolation on that little peripheral helper bot guy or whatever it is, it doesn't actually affect them because they're not like an auto-generating unit, so for some reason they just weren't affected. Which seemed weird to me because the whole idea, the theme of peripherals is that they have a much more direct link with their controller, and they are, they are affected, and their operation is determined by the controller in a much closer way than, for example, a trooper like a Fusilier who has a link to their lieutenant, for example. So if your communications get wiped out, your Fusilier can at least fire his gun, right? But in defense. But if you are a little robot that's being remote controlled by an operator, if the link between that and the operator gets broken, then you'd expect it to be ineffective after that. So if anything, isolation, I thought, ought to be something which is more effective than usual against peripherals. But previously, isolation didn't do anything to them, and now it actually completely disconnects them, which seems right to me. And I've had it mentioned to me that this is a nerf to Überfall commandos, and I'd agree that they need one. But just in general, like peripherals in 4 are very, very, very strong because they give you a way to trade a model with an enemy model that might be worth something, like an auto-generating model or something which has value, and you don't really lose something significant in return. Like a Pupnik, or like a little bot with an orc bot with a flamethrower, or some sort of guy like that. These are models, and like the Jackbot from Fiddler, these are models which are very, very expendable, but they could easily trade with an enemy model that is 30 or 40 points. And because that's possible, good players leverage that to their advantage. And now you've got a way of, for example, isolating the Fiddler's Jackbots, if that's a thing, or with an Emorat or something like that, or a Jammer. I think Jammer still causes isolation. It's been a while since I used one. So I feel like this is a good change. Just in general, it just makes sense to me. Now, here's another fun one. Enhanced Reaction is a hacking ability you can use from, I think it's an Evo bot, and it adds an additional burst for AROs onto a remote. So if you've got a sensor bot, for example, or something like that, instead of shooting burst 1 in a reactive turn, it's burst 2. Okay? So that was never particularly significant because the difference between burst 1 and burst 2 and the reactive turn for those kinds of units just wasn't really a big deal. And it wasn't stacking with link teams. So if you go, okay, I've got a Unidron with a plasma sniper rifle and it's by itself, now it's burst 2, but it splits to skill 11, it's still going to lose the fight. And you couldn't stack it with the existing +1 burst and the ballistic skill from your Unidron core link team. But now you can. So this means that if you really want to, you can have an Evo repeater and you can put on your enhanced reaction, and your Unidron plasma sniper can be burst 3 plus the other link team bonuses. Or this could happen to a Dakini sniper, or for example I think a missile bot in Druze can have it. I'll have to double check enhanced reaction. It might be like only for bots of a certain kind, but from what I remember, there are quite a lot of remotes that can benefit from this. But I must tell you that when it wasn't stacking with link teams, it was almost never being used. And now that it is stacking with link teams, it won't be something which crushes and breaks the game, because you can't also stack it with marksmanship, right? So if you think about it, your Unidron with burst 3 and the link team bonuses, it's going to be more annoying and more deadly, and it does come down to luck a bit more, which is why out of all the changes, I probably like this one the least. But I still find that it's fine. I think we're going to see enhanced reaction a bit more. I don't really think it's great for the game, but it's not going to wreck the game either. And we're actually going to see a rare ability used a little bit more, which is not the worst thing in the world. People are going to start trying things like the Dakinis and the Rudra and just units like that a little bit more often. And people will take Evo bots a little bit more often. But I still don't feel like it can contend with the most powerful things in the game. And even if you are burst 3 and reactive without assisted fire, you're still going to be bad odds to beat an active turn, HMG in a link team, for example. So if they come at you with a veteran Kazakh HMG or something like that, you would usually lose, and then you've invested the Evo bot and you've invested the order into it, and you've lost the guy in the link team anyway. So it's not going to be something you can sort of just bank everything on and just win tournaments with just like that. I don't feel like it's that kind of rule. Okay, so with skills, this is actually a pretty important one, because we were absolutely just I don't know if laughing's the right word, but we were just flabbergasted and just dumbfounded by Corvuspelli for the last couple of FAQs, where they were trying to fix a problem with the structure of orders and aero baiting and a lot of technical stuff, and they just weren't managing with it. Every time they introduced a new sort of thing, it just kept getting worse somehow. I don't know if I should go into too much detail with it, but I guess the idea here is that if you if you spend an order on a trooper and the enemy model can't see you, they've got to take an ARO if you're within their zone of control. So what would sometimes happen is that they would just declare a dodge or an idle, and then you would follow up with a short skill coming around the corner into close combat with them. Or if there was a smoke cloud in the way, they would lose their ability to shoot back, and you would shoot through the smoke cloud because your unit had MSV2. So we have, Speculo throws the smoke, Kodali goes into it, enemy model just hangs there because they have to sort of spend an idle when you move into the zone of control, and Kodali shoots you. And for a while, Corvus Belli thought that the solution to that was making it so that you could just declare close combat whenever and declare shooting whenever. And even if you can't see the model or you're not in base contact with them, it'll count as resolved at the end of the order. So it gives you a chance to sort of move into line of sight or into close combat. Maybe it'll be helpful if I just quickly jump back to this thing here, right? So you've got, I don't know, Wolver, and let's grab a Damaru. So the idea being that, at one point in infiNity's history, this guy would sort of move here, and this guy can't really do anything other than idle, and then he moves around to close combat, right? And then after the most recent errata, it was sort of like, what you can do here is the Wolver can declare CC, and the Damaru also declares CC, and then this guy moves into close combat, and they attack each other. Or, the Wolver can declare a shoot, and the Damaru can close combat, or whatever. So you don't actually have to sort of... doesn't have to be legal, the thing you're declaring at the time that you declare it, just as long as it becomes, part of the resolution, and you manage to fulfill the requirements of it by the end of the order, which people found a little bit weird. But we started coming up with these weird situations where it was like, okay, I'm declaring close combat first, and your opponent's dropping a chain rifle, and then I'm moving around the corner with the peripherals instead of the controller, and because the chain rifle was supposed to target the Wolver, then it becomes null, and the Damaru does nothing, and the peripherals damage the Damaru because it's an uber full commando. I've done some previous videos on this, guys, if you'd like to sort of check out my other FAQ videos, but the main thing you need to know is that they've actually implemented a change that we talked about, or the community talked about, not long after it, and that is that you can declare shoot or close combat right off the bat, even though you can't see your opponent or you're not in close combat with them. But you have to actually do the shooting or the close combat from a point that you have already been to when you declare it. So what that means is that if the Wolver shoots and then moves, it can't shoot from a point that it actually reached after declaring it. So perhaps an example is a little bit better here. So it's Ariadne a turn, Wolver declares shoot, the Damaru declares nothing, and the Wolver then moves over here and takes the shot from this point over here. So that was legal in the last version of the game. Now what they're saying is that you can still do that, but your shot counts from back here. And because you still can't see the Damaru from that point, it doesn't work. You're not legally allowed to do that. But if you start here and declare the ballistical attack at this point and then move back after finding out what your opponent does, that's legal. So you can do it in that sort of structure. And I think that is a reasonably elegant solution to a bunch of the problems that we were seeing before. I feel like it does still bring back this whole idea of, moving to the edge of the corner, your opponent declares close combat, and then you come around the corner. That's probably a good situation for the Damaru. There are probably some aero baits that you can do against models that don't really want to sort of whack you like that. Move around over here, make sure that they're not going to shoot you, and then keep on coming. Although, now that I think about it, so long as the ARO model can actually shoot from that point, you should be fine, and it probably does solve it. Let's go and take a look at the FAQ. I think that if the ARO model is able to declare that shot without seeing you, and then still make that shot from its same location because it's not moving, then that probably is a good situation overall. I'm not sure what page it's on though, so yeah, I don't think that's too important for me to go too much deeper in to this video, but the main thing here is that it does remove some shenanigans, and as far as I can tell, it's not really adding any new ones that we've checked for yet. And because they're implementing an idea that the community has kind of already tested and kind of already thought about, they're much more successful with it. And I feel like Corvus Belli should do that a lot more. Like if they are actually looking at what players are using as a workaround to their shoddy rules, and then make those workarounds into actual, legitimate, canonical, official rules, then they're probably more likely to do well rather than worse. Now, let us just take a detour in this video and talk about something which is quite juicy. You may have noticed that in these FAQs there are these things called development team notes, and they actually have a little bit of an explanation about how to use the rules change or why they've put it in there. And that is kind of special. Development team note: by adding this important box, our intention is to end, note that word intention, is to end all the annoying situations, and they were your situations, by the way, you were the ones annoying us, by the way, that have been generated with the modification of the order sequence, but keeping the flexibility when declaring skills. So you will still be able to declare shoot as the first half of the order. However, if you really want to shoot a trooper behind a wall, you must move first and then shoot, as we talked about, right? You have to move first, then shoot for that to work. But they're putting in developer notes. Several people have said to me, hey, VaulSC, they put in development notes just like you told them to in so many of your videos. Maybe they are listening. And look, that is a hilarious sentiment. Like, if that is true, then DM me with your wish lists, guys. I'll start making some videos. But, look, I this is not really like a gloating or I told you so moment. It's just common sense. It's just normal, sensible behavior from people who develop games. Putting this stuff in there is really helpful for the community to understand why they're doing something. And if you try to implement some new wordings and you don't get it quite right and the wordings still leave ambiguity, if you've put some stuff about your intentions, that is what the community will go with and use when they're trying to resolve their own disputes. And that's one of the reasons why it is just so helpful. So I urge Corvus Belli to continue doing it. I thank you for starting to do that. More of these updates should have development team notes on them. And especially the balance changes when you guys change the costs of units and you give them new rules or take rules away from them. Provide development team notes for that as well. It's just a really, really good practice, and it goes a long way to generating more goodwill from the players, right? Really important. Motorcycles. Okay, so we're going back to this thing where when the motorcycle ITS version came out, something about frozen roads or whatever it was, and we played that for a year. Motorbikes could initially choose between impetuous or not having impetuous so that they can have cover, and it looks like they're bringing that back now. And I don't love the idea that motorbikes are arbitrarily given some bonuses. I would still prefer them to make the weaker bikes more powerful and make the more powerful bikes weaker. I mean, you look at motorcycles like Zulika and Zamira, and look, they don't need to be much better, right? They don't need to be, super powered. Whereas, the biker lady from JSA, who has the scythe, can't remember her name, the cat lady. I mean, she can use some help, for example. So what you should be doing really is just, going through the bikes themselves and tweaking them rather than having a blanket change, which usually is going to mean that the crappy bikes don't become good enough to take, but the oppressively powerful bikes become better. I still am going to stick to my guns on that particular issue. Fire team composition bonuses are private info until you use their bonuses. So that's a pretty cool thing. What was happening is we were finding that if you have like a Hafsa in a QK Link team, your opponent could ask certain questions of you about what bonuses you had, and that would sort of give away the presence of a hidden hollow echo sort of model, which is kind of weird. Whereas now you can keep that to yourself, and the more private information we have in this game, the better in my mind. I've mentioned this in other videos, and what we really need is the ability to make plays and use those skills and actually outwit our opponents rather than having to just declare things because a rule wasn't worded well enough is usually the issue there. Now, there was another thing that I wanted to cover off, and I'm not too sure if it is in the little cheat sheet bit here, so I am just going to go ahead and mention it on TTS. If we come back to our Damaru's, I believe there is a new change in the errata where if you have a link leader like this guy over here with the boarding shotgun and all of you guys are moving somewhere and you come into line of sight to use that boarding shotgun and you shoot, it doesn't necessarily mean that the rest of the team are shooting, like, because they're not seeing the enemy model. You're only firing with your boarding shotgun guy, so that means that the rest of the team is not going to break stealth anymore. So previously, they counted as, you know, trying to do the same action as the leader. Now, not so much. And look, that's just a sensible change. If there's a hacker over here, that hacker is now going to be able to hack somebody for free. But if they all still maintain stealth, that can't happen. So you get to, you know, be a little bit more in control of what happens to your heavy infantry link teams, for example. It's not a big enough buff that you'd actually start taking a Damaru link in all seriousness. But it starts to edge us a little bit more towards these situations where, you know, those kinds of teams become viable. We really would need to see some serious changes to, like, the Damaru setup or the Joan of Arc Crusader link, for example, for that to become a reality. But look, this is a step in the right direction, not a step in the wrong direction, so that's why, like, I'm generally fine with it. Alright guys, so just going to quickly browse through this, see if I've missed anything important that I wanted to talk about. I don't really think there was. infiNity is going to continue on after this FAQ. There are fewer things in the game that are causing any issues as a result of it. But, like, the work is not done. Obviously, the game still does continue to have outstanding issues. This doesn't address all of them. We also have we have a long way to go in terms of balance for the game. The list of profiles and loadouts in Army, I can confidently say, and everyone seems to agree, that over 50% of the options you can take are just, you know, not usable in competitive play, which is annoying. That could easily be different. There are a lot of skills that are too good or not good enough. And look, all that's there for another video, but so long as Corvus Belli are moving in the right direction rather than the wrong direction, and sometimes they do move in the wrong direction, like, I'm happy if they're going down the right track. It's also encouraging about those developer notes. Keep it up, guys. Want to see more of those, make them more detailed, include them more often, and above all, try and engage with the community more rather than less. You know, players would just have so much more goodwill and respect for, you know, games developers if they talk to us a bit more, maybe do some more interviews, come and play games with us, speak to us in Discord, you know, post on the forums whenever you can. That certainly helps, and it sort of drums up interest in the game, gets people a little bit more interested in participating. It's generally very good. All right, so thank you for the FAQ rules errata. We'll get back to playing and hopefully buying your miniatures, and thanks for watching the video.